Let's just say we met in high school, fell madly in love, and married as soon as I got a job. We've been married for 18 years and have a 17-year-old daughter, Jessica. You do the math. 2 years later, we were blessed with twin sons, Brian and Baxter. Life was good, and I had no complaints, but I was the only one. It seemed that Marcy had not been happy for some time. Today, I was lucky enough to find out everything. I worked for a small manufacturing company as their sole electronic data processing manager. I worked my way up to that position over the course of 10 years. However, I had more ambitious plans, and every night and most weekends, I worked with my best friend Elton to develop a computer server system that would provide instantaneous long-distance links. Although software development seemed to outstrip our hardware efforts, Elton and I were able to devise a small, tight system that we were almost ready to move forward. Unfortunately, we weren't working fast enough to save my marriage. Today was the day Marcy decided to give me the bad news. John, it's very simple. All I ask is $500 a month for child support. You keep the house, the furniture, and everything else. He had been explaining things to me for 15 minutes, and I, of course, was listening to almost nothing. I don't want to interrupt, but $500 seems small to me for 3 children. Marcy let out an exasperated sigh. John, it's only for Jessica, and only until she's 18. I'm doing my best to be fair, and I think $500 is reasonable. What about the kids? Aren't you taking them too? Sure you do, but you don't have to pay them child support because you're not their father. I'm very surprised you didn't realize that years ago. I guess that shows how really dense it was. No, I didn't realize. It didn't even cross my mind that the kids might not be mine. Now he was telling me that not only did he want a divorce, but that he had been cheating on me for at least 16 years. What else was there that I didn't know? My mind started to wander again. She kept talking, and I was trying to fit all the pieces together in my head. I'm sure what she was saying was important, but I couldn't concentrate. Okay. Damn right, all right. I'll agree to almost anything. The only thing I insist on is that I have Jessica every weekend and every school vacation, including summer. Marcy stopped talking for a moment. I can live with that. If it's okay with Jessica, I'll have the papers ready tomorrow. Will you sign them then? I could tell she was getting ready to leave. I hadn't realized it before, but she had been moving her things gradually over the past few weeks. Just a couple of questions before you go, please. Who the hell is the twins' father? Who are they going to live with? Lastly, why have you waited so long? Langford King is Brian and Baxter's father. We're all moving into his house. What about his wife? Where are Joyce and the girls going to stay? Joyce left and took the girls with her. When she caught Langford and me in bed, her marriage was over. I didn't file for divorce before because Langford was still married, and I had no choice. Now that he's getting a divorce, it seems practical for me to do so as well. You've been banging Langford for 16 years? That's right, and I have no intention of stopping. I'm sorry, John. You're a great guy, but you're only mediocre in bed, and I'm afraid you're going to be working just to put bread on the table for the rest of your life. Langford is rich, successful, and a great sex partner. I only have one life, and I want to enjoy it to the fullest. You couldn't give me that. I had no answer for that. I watched her walk out the door and cracked open a cold beer. She was right. Here I was, sitting in a $300 recliner, drinking cheap beer. I had big plans, and that was it. I guess what really killed any feelings I still had for her was when she compared my sexual performance to Langford. There's not much you can do about something like that. You either have it, or you don't. I was always satisfied, but apparently Marcy was not. We had known Langford and Joyce since high school. Foster King, Langford's father, was the carpet king in our town for as long as I can remember. About 10 years ago, he retired to Florida, and his only son took over the business. Many of us used to get together at regular intervals for barbecues, picnics, and other get-togethers. Marcy and Langford were always friendly with each other, but no more so than any of the other people who attended. Langford began to drift away from our group as his bank account grew. In the last few years, we only saw them 2 or 3 times. At least I did. They had 2 beautiful teenage daughters who were friends with Jessica. Speaking of Jessica, she was the bright spot in my hectic life. She was small, funny, and cute. She always made me smile. Unlike her siblings, she studied hard and was an excellent student. All she wanted was to get good grades on her SATs and get accepted into a good college. I did everything I could to help her. Brian and Baxter were the opposite. Not only were they not interested in academics, but they also had no desire to participate in sports. I tried several times to get them involved in my computer projects without success. Most of my contact with them was either preventative or corrective in nature. I would adjust situations and their mother would walk all over me. Now I understood why. Marcy was always a good wife. She never denied me sex and often initiated it. She kept the house clean and was never demanding. She was a great mother and a wife I was proud of. It seems she was also a fabulous actress. I was finishing my third long neck when Jessica came home from school. There was no telling when the kids would arrive. They usually missed dinner several times a week, and Marcy didn't say anything. She had long since stopped arguing. "Hi, Dad. What are you doing home? Where's Mom?" I struggled up from the recliner and gathered my empty things. "Your mother asked me to come home for lunch today to tell me she wanted a divorce." My words sounded a little garbled, even to myself. I'm not a good drinker. "I'll get them. Sit down. I guess that explains why you drink in the middle of the day." Jessica took the bottles from me and carried them into the kitchen. "You had no idea, did you, Dad?" "No." I watched as he took off his shoes and dropped to the floor. "What's going to happen now? You and the boys and go live with your mother at Langford King's house. The mansion on the hill. Your mother always wanted to be rich, apparently." "It's not a mansion. It's just a big old house that his father built years ago." We sat in silence for a few moments. "Did you know that I am not the father of your siblings?" "Yes. Brian and Baxter joke about it a lot. I guess Mom told them years ago. Every time you scold them about something, they take it and then go somewhere and laugh." "Well, I guess that explains a lot, doesn't it? How do you know all this?" "I've known for years, but I didn't want to say anything. You seemed happy enough and I didn't want to rock the boat. A couple of weeks ago, Lisbeth and Carla told me they were moving to Lancaster. Her mother caught Mom and Mr. King in bed together. I figured something would happen soon. You could mention it." "I don't think so." There was another moment of silence. "I'd rather stay here with you. You'll need someone to help you at home." "That would never go forward. The court wouldn't allow it. However, I came to a small agreement." "How is that going to work?" "You can stay here every weekend and all school vacations, including summer. I can make it work. Why don't you go take a shower and I'll order some pizza?" While we were eating, Jessica presented her plan for the separation. She would come to our house on Friday after school and stay until she went back to school on Monday morning. It sounded better than I had imagined. We were still discussing the details when the phone rang. "John, I just wanted to tell you that the kids are here and will be staying the night. Tomorrow, while you're at work, the kids and I will move our stuff here. They can afford to miss a day of school. Jessica can spend the afternoon deciding what she wants to take and what she wants to stay there. I don't see any reason why we can't start the new arrangement right now, do you?" "No, that's fine with me. I'll tell Jessica." The reassignment of the bodies seemed to go smoothly. I found myself home alone and, to tell you the truth, a little relieved. I was having a hard time concentrating on work because I kept trying to figure out where I had gone wrong. Not knowing anything about my wife's relationship with a close friend didn't make things any better. Elton and his wife, Beth, offered me a shoulder to cry on, and I readily accepted. The obvious answer was booze, but I decided against it. Instead, I started devoting even more time to the server project. Beth wasn't too happy about Elton working more hours than he did, and I ended up having to send him home several times. The divorce papers were filed, and Jessica started spending weekends with me. She was careful not to say anything derogatory about her mother, but she never seemed to have anything nice to say either. She seemed a little annoyed by the amount of time I was spending on server development. But she wasn't complaining. She kept busy doing the laundry and household chores that Marcy could no longer do. I didn't intend to use her in that way, but she seemed glad to have something to keep her busy other than studying for the SATs. I always had time to have lunch with her. It was late spring when things started to look up. Jessica was accepted to the University of Oregon and was also approved for a senior year abroad in Spain. She was worried that Marcy wouldn't let her go for some reason, but she needed her permission. I didn't understand her concern until I discovered that she had not told her mother about her college applications or the exchange program request. At my suggestion, Jessica asked her mother to sign the permission to go abroad, presenting it as a study trip, without further explanation. Marcy signed the paper without even looking at it. The following week, we applied for her passport. My divorce was final. Langford was still fighting Joyce for hers. Joyce wanted blood. Marcy signed over all rights to the house to me, but I still didn't know what I was going to do with it. While Elton and I finished the server project, Beth used her computer skills to create an elegant presentation. We prepared a slide presentation and had the handouts professionally printed. A week later, we had a contract to supply a hardware system to the State Highway Commission, and a nice check. I was forced to quit my job to get it. Since I no longer had a family, a steady job wasn't that important. Elton, on the other hand, couldn't afford to quit his job, but worked many nights and every weekend to get everything up and running. Beth seemed a little more understanding. It didn't cost us anything to hire several college students to help us with the installation. The wireless technology seemed to simplify everything, and the entire installation was done with off-the-shelf components. Within 6 weeks, we had a fully operational system. It had a few glitches, but the customer was delighted. 2 days later, the State Department of Corrections called to set up an appointment. Elton quit his job, and Beth announced she was pregnant. The second hire went much smoother. A couple of students had graduated and were happy to be hired full-time. Elton struggled without me for a week while I accompanied my daughter to Barcelona. I needed the vacation, and Jessica was feeling better with me. Marcy was furious when she found out about the trip, and also when I stopped sending her child support checks. I could easily afford to pay them, but I felt like making her angry. All I had to do was hold out for 5 more months until Jessica turned 18. We were receiving inquiries faster than we could answer them. I became the full-time contact person and was constantly traveling. Elton took care of things at home for the most part. We had to rent a small office, which Beth quickly took over. She was happy for me to do most of the traveling. Beth was forced to hire office staff to be trained when she had the baby, and we also hired a lawyer. Things were going better than we had anticipated. Our legal sleuth encouraged us to incorporate, but subcontracted the work to a professional law firm in Philadelphia. I felt lonely at home again. I could handle a few days without Jessica because I always knew she would be there on the weekends. Now I was spending a lot of time emailing and making overseas calls. I guess being busy kept me from thinking about my loneliness. I never heard from Marcy or the boys. I spent Christmas in Spain with my daughter. Everything was wonderful. In 4 months, Jessica would return home and then back to Oregon for college. When I wasn't traveling, it was easy to create a ritual. Every morning I had the same breakfast in the same place, at the same cafe. It only took me a few weeks to become a regular. When I wasn't thinking about the project, I spent a lot of time thinking about what had gone wrong in my marriage. The more I thought about it, the more bitter I felt. I needed closure and some kind of satisfaction. My wife had humiliated me for 15 years. How could I let it go? A small article on the 3rd page of the morning paper gave me some hope. Philip Hughes sued King Carpets for wrongful termination. Apparently, Philip had been general manager of King Carpets for more than 10 years. He had worked for Foster King before he retired and stayed on. Apparently, Foster King was an honorable man and ran a straight business. Langford was doing things a little differently. Philip refused to accept the shoddy workmanship and substandard products Langford favored. When he complained, Langford fired him. The demand was weak, and he had little chance of winning. I decided I wanted to meet Mr. Hughes. My bank account was bigger than ever. Jessica had settled into college, and I had already paid for the first course. Things were starting to go well. I hadn't heard from Marcy in several months. I had no idea how well the new business was doing. I didn't even know it existed. It only took me 10 minutes to convince Philip Hughes to drop the lawsuit against Langford King. He had been wanting to open his own carpet business for several years, but didn't have the money or the backing. Elton was more than willing to put up half the money. Both he and Beth thought it would be a good investment. Other than King Carpets, the only competition would be the 2 large home stores in the area. Philip was confident that with the right customer service and pricing, he could stand up to them. Elton and I liked Hughes and allowed him to go forward on his own, with our financial blessing. Within 6 months, Empire Carpet was fully operational and making money. In that same period, Elton and I had expanded into our 6th state. Our server system turned out to be perfect for most government operations with numerous locations. We never had to advertise. The business grew on its own, and before long we were completely overwhelmed. It was hard to tell if we were very happy or very frustrated. Best of all were the monthly checks, which kept coming in. Brian and Baxter had been arrested for selling drugs. Most of the transactions were at their high school. It took our lawyer more than half a day to convince the authorities that I was no longer responsible for their actions. At the end of the day, papers were filed releasing me from any parental responsibility for both of them. In the evening, Marcy called to reprimand me for my actions. I hung up on her and turned off my cell phone. In a few months, they would be 18 and responsible for their own lives. I raised them, but I never liked fools. After receiving 2 inquiries from the great state of California, Serpentine Enterprises of Palo Alto made a formal offer to buy our small company. We had been in business for just over 2 years and were offered $60 million in cash, plus some stock options in the company. We had no problem accepting the deal. Elton agreed to stay with the company at a ridiculous salary, but he would have to move to San Francisco. Beth said she would divorce him if he didn't take it. 3 of our young engineers would become millionaires overnight before they turned 25. I decided to retire. The realtor was putting up the for sale sign in the front yard when a van pulled into the driveway. It was one of those custom-made vans with a special wheelchair ramp attached to the side. I watched from the porch as a pretty Latina woman stepped out of the driver's door and activated the ramp mechanism. It was obvious that she had done it hundreds of times before. In less than a minute, an older man, whom I immediately recognized as Foster King, was driving a motorized cart down my sidewalk. The porch steps prevented him from going any further, so I walked over to greet him. "Do you know who I am, young man?" I was flattered that he referred to me as a young man. Maybe it was his way of catching me off guard. "Of course, I recognize you from your TV commercials. You sure have aged." My impudence made me smile a little. The grim expression with which he approached me seemed to fade at my obviously childish comment about his age. He wiggled a little on the cart before surprising me again. "I need a beer. Do you have cold beer? In a bottle, not one of those damn cans. There are some Fosters in the fridge. Do you want to come in or shall I bring them in here? Just relax. Maya can get them. Sit down. We need to talk." Maya circled me as I sat on the porch steps. I have to admit that the old man caught my eye, but so did Maya. She was wearing a white blouse and black pants. The pants weren't particularly tight, but tight enough to show off a nice ass. It wasn't what I would call small, but it was shapely. "Easy, boy. She'll be right back." Foster King caught me looking at her friend and took the opportunity to give me a dig. "Sorry. No offense, but she's quite attractive. Why the hell do you think I hired her? I hope it was to seduce me. In your dreams, young man. She's more woman than you could ever handle." We were both laughing when Maya came back with the long necks. She looked at us funny when we stopped suddenly. "You didn't come here to drink my beer, Mr. King. What can I do for you?" Maya was half sitting and half standing, with one leg propped up on the porch railing. She caught me looking again and let out a giggle. "You're causing me a lot of problems, Mr. Terrell. A good percentage of my retirement income comes from the profits generated by my business. That income has been declining lately, and I have discovered that you may be the cause of it. I'd like to give you a chance to explain yourself before I kill you. Now, Foster, please behave yourself. You promised me you wouldn't do any of that nonsense. Apologize to Mr. Terrell." It was the first time Maya had spoken since they arrived. I expected some kind of accent, but she spoke perfect English. Damn it. He won't let me have any fun. Foster finished what was left in the bottle with one last swig. "I'm sorry, John. I was just trying to get your attention. I promise I won't get you killed." He said that last in a fake Italian accent and then gave me a small smile. "Who did you talk to before you came to see me?" "I had dinner last night with my son and that sleazy broad he's sleeping with. He says you caused all the trouble. It was hard to get anything out of him because he kept insisting that you were trying to get even for something. I finally got fed up with him and left early. I didn't even get to see my granddaughters. I was hoping you could give me some facts instead of bullshit." Before he could say anything, Maya stepped off the railing and whispered something in Foster's ear. "Oh, damn." He slammed his hand against the arm of the cart. "That explains everything. Why the hell didn't you tell me last night, Maya? Sometimes I wonder what I pay you for. You pay me because I'm the only one who puts up with you." "Mr. Terrell, I was unaware that the woman staying with my son was your ex-wife. I apologize for referring to her as sleazy. To be honest, I don't understand why you would be upset with my son for taking her. It seems to me that you would be thanking her." "I understand you didn't like it." "Not particularly. He got a little upset when I asked Langford where my granddaughters were. Joyce and the girls are staying with their parents in Lancaster. You know Joyce." "Very good. I consider her a good friend. I can't say the same for her son." "Well, this is all very interesting, but I still have to get down to the business I came for. Mr. King, have you spoken to Philip Hughes yet?" "No. Why should I? Is he a trustworthy person? If so, don't you think he could give you the best answers?" Foster sat quietly as he thought. "Can I have another beer?" No. She didn't object or hesitate. It seemed Maya was in charge of her welfare, if nothing else. "I'm leaving. Tomorrow I'll talk to Philip and visit my granddaughters." Foster King was a determined man. He put the car in gear toward the driveway before Maya could get up. She smiled at me as she hurried to catch up. I looked forward to seeing her again. Suddenly, I thought about how long it had been since I'd had sex. Maya was as efficient getting Foster into the van as she was getting him out of it. Before the door closed, she looked at me. "Don't leave town, John Terrell. We still have business." I found the visit enlightening. After killing another beer, I took a long, cold shower. I think Maya had taken hold of me. She was probably married or involved with some youngster, but I could still daydream. That night, I received a surprise visit from my ex-wife. "John, what the hell are you doing? Langford says you're behind this Empire carpet fiasco." I told him it was a mistake. but he insists you're trying to drive him out of business. Marcy, King Carpets has been a fixture in this town since we were kids. I don't know a damn thing about the carpet business, so what makes you think I had anything to do with it? Don't play dumb with me, John. I know you better than that. You and Elton are the owners of the building. The new store is in, and your names are on all the forms and paperwork necessary to start the business. Langford has friends who were able to find this out without any trouble. Philip Hughes is just a front. You're right, of course. I could never fool you, could I? Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop it? Of course we won't. Elton and I have invested too much money in this to just walk away. If you're paying attention, I think things could get even worse in the next few days. What else are you going to do? How can it be any worse than it is? I'm not sure. In fact, I could be wrong. Forget I said anything. Of course, the seed had been planted. There was no way I could forget it now. It was obvious that my wife was upset with me. She headed for the door and turned before she left. The way you treated Brian and Baxter after their arrest was terrible. You raised those boys, and you should have shown a lot more compassion for them than you did. I expected more from you. I'm just curious, Marcy. When did you tell the boys that I wasn't their father? Is it important? I think so. About 3 years ago, they accidentally crossed paths with me and Langford over coffee in a little store on Bleecker Street. There was a confrontation and things started to get ugly. I decided it was a good time to tell them the truth. The truth is, they took it better than I expected. Okay, that explains a lot. I gave my ex-wife a big smile. By the way, I'm going to see Jessica tomorrow. Do you want me to say hi to her for you? Don't bother. She has made it perfectly clear that I have failed as a wife and as a mother, as far as she is concerned. I'll take care of my children, and you can spoil your precious daughter all you want. He walked out, slamming the door. I spent the next week with Jessica. She devoted as much time as she could to her studies and showed me all her favorite places within a 100-mile radius. I wasn't surprised when she told me she wanted to stay in the area after she graduated. I missed her, but I was proud that she was doing well. When I got home, I had a few surprises waiting for me. Foster King had been a busy man. He had no idea why he was confined to that motorized car, or whether he really needed it. Apparently, his money and influence in the area meant a lot. In one fell swoop, Joyce King had a new team of the sharpest lawyers in the state. By the end of the week, she was back at her old house, and Langford and Marcy were in a motel living out of suitcases. She had no idea where the boys were. The only thing I knew for sure was that they had been expelled from school and were awaiting some kind of trial or hearing. I wasn't too worried. Joyce had sent all of Langford and Marcy's clothes and other belongings to storage. My plans to use Philip Hughes to bankrupt the King Carpet Company came to a screeching halt. Apparently, Langford had never owned the company. Foster had kept it in his name and had also retained control over the entire operation, although he had not exercised it in recent years. Philip had left several calls on my answering machine, insisting that we needed to talk. It was impossible for me to know that Philip Hughes and Joyce King were friends. I didn't know exactly how good friends they were, but they were close enough to trust each other. Foster King fired his son and got a court order to keep him away from the business and everything connected with it, including the company car. He also appointed Joyce as the new head of the operation. Since she had no real experience in the business, her only recourse was to ask Philip for help. Philip was torn between his loyalty to Elton and me and his desire to help Joyce. He desperately wanted to make everyone happy and sought my advice. Elton was 3,000 miles away. My realtor had 2 offers on the house waiting for me to review. One of them called for possession in 30 days, so I accepted it. Jessica was gone, Elton and Beth were gone, and I had no reason to stay in the area. The realtor was putting the sold sign on the house when Marcy arrived. He stood in the driveway and stared at the word sold for a long time before approaching the house. Is it a done deal, or do they have to get financing or credit approval? It's a lock. They had cash, and they wanted it now. I'll be out of here by the end of the week. Why do you care? Joyce King got a fancy lawyer and was able to steal Langford's house. We were looking for a place to live until we can find a new one to buy. I thought you might want to rent this one. I'm sorry. You're late, but I'm sure with all the money in Langford, you won't have any trouble finding a place. I chuckled to myself as I said that. She had no idea that I was fully aware of the financial difficulties they were going through. I was sure Foster King was not going to go easy on her wayward son. Philip had informed Foster about how Langford was running the business and how he was treating his wife. Dad was not happy. Marcy didn't press the issue any further. As she left, I noticed the Alamo car rental sticker on the rear bumper of the car. Philip Hughes and Joyce King came to see me that afternoon. I was surprised at how well they got along. It didn't take long for us to come to an agreement. Empire Carpets would become Empire Floors, selling only tile and hardwood floors. King Carpets would sell only carpet. Philip saw no problem running both businesses, but would only do so if Elton and I agreed. He believed the two businesses would complement each other. He also indicated that after a few years, King Carpets might be interested in buying Empire. I thought that was very smart of him. I noticed Joyce had a sheepish grin on her face when he said that. I guess they were more friends than I thought. All the furniture and things in the house I gave to the Salvation Army. In fact, I also gave them most of my clothes. I had to renew my wardrobe, and it was a good time to do it. When I was done choosing, I could put everything I wanted or needed in the car. I spent an entire day closing accounts and making sure I had no outstanding debts. Somehow, Foster King got my cell phone number and forced me to have dinner with him that night. It would be my last day in town. I was sure things would go well. And in fact, I was looking forward to seeing Maya again. Foster King was a proud man and also liked to gloat a bit. He gave me a quick summary of his meetings with Hughes and Joyce. There was no doubt in his mind that the actions he had taken against his son were well-deserved. He thanked me for allowing Hughes to help Joyce. I tried to listen to every word she said, mostly out of politeness, but my eyes kept straying to Maya. She was wearing a gray-green evening gown that made her eyes sparkle. Her hairstyle and makeup were perfect. Foster noticed the distraction and paused once in mid-sentence, just to make me uncomfortable. Her laugh gave away her intention. Maya didn't join the conversation, other than to stop Foster from reordering the drinks and not letting him order dessert. She feigned a small pout and made a half-hearted comment under her breath. Maya excused herself to go to the ladies' room, and that gave Foster the opportunity to confront me. What are your intentions after selling your house? The house is sold, and I'm going to San Francisco tomorrow morning to see my friends, Elton and Beth. They have a new baby, and they've named him after me. Did you name your child John? Well, actually, Johnny, how could I say no? Where are you going when you get back? I have no idea. I'm going to leave my car at the airport, which is full of everything I own. I guess I'll drive south until something catches my eye. I have a better idea. Stay with me. My house is too big for me alone, and I hate seeing Maya alone all the time. Foster, what the hell are you getting at? Maya's husband died in a car accident about 3 years ago. She has no friends in West Palm Beach and little opportunity to meet any eligible men. You are the only man she has expressed interest in for the past year. Did he say anything? No, but I've noticed how he looks at you, and he's always interested when I talk about you. I'll tell you what, come and stay with us for a month. If nothing comes of it, you can get in your car and start wandering around again. You've got nothing to lose, and I'd really enjoy the company. The conversation ended when Maya returned to the table. She smiled at both of us, as if we had just done something wrong and she was indulging it. She was definitely going to West Palm Beach. My visit with Elton and Beth was perfect. The new owners were able to expand the operation to over 20 states and several overseas locations. In a few years, the stock options would probably be worth much more than the cash they paid us. Johnny was adorable. I'm sure he'll curse his parents for naming him a boy's name, but I'll be the best godfather a child could have. I called Philip Hughes as soon as I got home, just to make sure everything was going well, before I left. The business was fine, and he gave me a quick update on Langford. It seems he had a fair amount of personal debt that was not covered by the business accounts or assets. The cost of the divorce plus the expense of hiring a lawyer for Brian and Baxter had left him pretty broke. He had no credit, no cash, and no prospects. I felt good for Marcy. 2 days later, I was in West Palm Beach. Foster King must have been richer than I thought, because the oceanfront house was magnificent. Whenever he could, he would get Maya and me together. I insisted that she show me all the restaurants in South Florida. After a while, we would pretend to go out, but in reality, we would stay in the beach house watching TV. Eating out every night sounds better than it really is. I think he knew what we were doing, but he considered it as good as what we got to do. We enjoyed our time with Foster, but we were starting to enjoy our time together even more. It seemed to make him happy. Maya and I started sleeping together after the 3rd week. Foster knew this, of course, and started bugging us relentlessly. He didn't stop until I moved into his room. That seemed to make him happy. Life was good. My financial situation was incredible. I lived in an oceanfront mansion with no expenses and shared my bed with a beautiful woman. My money was earning more interest than I could spend, and my stock options were growing so fast they made me blink. I bought a new car. I always wanted a Mercedes. Joyce's divorce had been finalized, and Philip Hughes soon moved in with her. Marcy, however, had second thoughts. Suddenly, being married to Langford King didn't seem like a good idea. Marcy seemed to disappear into the night. Jessica and I never heard from her again. Before the end of the year, Foster asked me to witness his new will. I never knew what exactly was wrong with him, but he seemed to be going downhill. He left all his assets to Lisbeth and Carla to be held in trust by their mother until they were 25. He left the business to Joyce on the condition that she marry within a year of his death. He left the West Palm Beach house to Maya with the same provision. Things didn't go as planned, but who was I to complain? Oh yeah, I'm getting married sooner than I expected, because I just found out that Maya is going to be a mother. If it's a girl, I won't name her Elton. Epilogue. Brian and Baxter decided to seek their fortune in Mexico, but things did not go well for them there. Marcy showed up from somewhere and asked me to help her with her legal expenses. I gave her $10,000 and never saw her or the kids again. Jessica finished her studies and moved to Barcelona. I'm not sure, but I think she met a young man there. Foster hung on for 2 more years. There was no autopsy, and I still don't know what was wrong with him. He lived long enough to be godfather to my new daughter, Foster Anne Maria Terrell. I will name the next one Elton.